Alright, so I want to put a quote to you and I would love to hear your counterpoint. This was when I was a young adult teenager and I began questioning the teachings as you naturally do, and I started poking holes in the theories and asking particular questions that I didn't find satisfactory answers to. I, as many people do, looked to wiser people than myself. And I always had a particular affiliation with Greek philosophers and that whole ancient time period of the great thinkers of our time, I believe. A lot of them were very logical thinkers, but they also posed arguments that contradicted their internal beliefs. They did not feel that sense of attack for their belief structure. And this is a quote by Epicurus that reads, "Is God willing to prevent evil, but is not able? Then he is not omnipotent. Is he able, but not willing? Then he is malevolent. Is he both able and willing? Then from whence comes evil?"
That is a heavy-hitting question. Okay, so let's break it down. In the beginning, you talked about, well, evil. That's what this whole thing is based off of. If God exists, why does...
Sorry, if I can just ask you to speak up again.
Oh, sorry. If God does exist, why does evil exist, pretty much?
Yes.
So let's break it down. As Muslims, we believe that this world is temporary. There's the whole idea of the dunya, which is again this world, and the akhirah, which is the life after death.
Okay.
And so we truly believe that all of this is a test, all of this is a run to test the type of character you are, test, well, what you do in your life, pretty much, what path you walk down. And you're pretty much you're judged based on your deeds that you commit in this world. I feel like this is a story that rings true to a lot of people, and so I won't really elaborate on it.
And to many different faiths, yes.
Exactly. So with this in mind, with the whole idea of this being a test, now, if we take it back to the whole root idea of evil, there's within it the idea of balance. You can't have evil without good, and you can't have good without evil. You need a baseline. You need to be able to compare the two of them. And it pretty much stems from the same idea as you can't have light without darkness. You cannot appreciate what is without what isn't.
Very good point.
And so I think we can tie this around and say that in the world we live in, there are some really atrocious things going on. There's atrocious people with atrocious mindsets, behaviors, agendas, things that I feel like personally, as humanity, we fail to really control and moderate and mandate and judge. Things that really fly under the radar to meet political biases, to meet monetary biases and sort of really push an agenda at the end of the day. And going back to the idea of us all having biases, we can't really judge ourselves based on our biases. I mean, you and me as different people also have our biases. You know, it's sort of like, why don't you like that food? Because I just don't like it. It's the same argument. We have our biases with tons of different things. It's a natural human thing. And so we believe we aren't really fair judges. We can't really judge ourselves based on what we do.
Okay.
And that's where the day of judgment comes in, where every creature that has been born from the beginning of time until the end of times is judged based on what they've done. And that is the true equalizer. See, in our lives, we're only guaranteed two things. This is what we believe as Muslims, that you're guaranteed to be born, you are guaranteed to die. You're not guaranteed to know your parents, you're not guaranteed to live to a certain age. None of that is promised. But at the end of the day, what's promised is living and dying. This is the only promise we really have. And the day of judgment, that's another promise that we know is coming.
Okay, and forgive me, I'm trying to draw similarities between different religions here. So you said what the two things that are guaranteed are life and death.
100%.
So is life always guaranteed? What would then, there's no viewpoint, anything in relation to reincarnation or previous lives or an overarching interconnectedness of everything, of energy, so to say, before you are born?
I mean, I guess I'm personally somebody. See, now there's a difference between complete spirituality and religion.
Mm-hmm.
I'm somebody who believes in underlying energies. I mean, think about it, the gut feeling. Have you ever had a conversation with somebody and you just know that something is not right within this person?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've personally had an experience where I met somebody for the first time, had a horrible gut feeling about them. This is not going to go well. This person has a different motive, they have a different agenda. And sure, I didn't prove it in days, weeks, months, even years, but about 5 or 6 years down the line, I found out that they were, well, somebody who manipulated other people, somebody who really turned the tides to make himself look like the best in every single situation, somebody who's not very honest, somebody, again, a very manipulative person that you can just tell from the gut sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing like the instinct of a mother, I think we can both relate to this. When you're feeling sad, even if it's over the phone, even if it's over a message.
It's funny how that works. You'll randomly get a phone call from your mother.
Exactly. That's another really freaky thing. The amount of times I've been feeling like in a really weird, dark place and I get a phone call, Mom.
So, extrapolating, do you then believe that is coincidence, energy, or possibly Allah's hand in it?
100% Allah's hand. I don't believe that. I don't really think coincidence is a thing. I mean, in Islam, we're taught the whole thing of destiny. That's the whole notion of it.
That everything's already planned.
Exactly, it's already been written, and that's why, especially when Muslims go through hard times, one of the things we say is that Allah is the best of planners. He's sufficient. He knows what is to come, and surely what He takes away from us will serve to our detriment, and what He gives us will serve to our betterment. You see, it's sort of like an ant walking down a stick. You can only see, as an ant, they can only see in 2 dimensions. They just see a line. They just follow that line, and I could be pretty wrong with this, the exact biology of it, but to my understanding, they can only see in a certain dimension. They have a certain perspective, and that is, this stick is the biggest thing in the world. This is everything I can see. But as an observer looking at the ant, you see them just walking up and down this one stick. Perhaps not to their betterment, perhaps not to their detriment. But again, we don't have a perspective. We don't really know what's good for us. We think we know what's good for us. It's the whole idea of really thoughts that stick aren't the thoughts that are true, but they're the thoughts that are the most interesting to us, they're the thoughts that are most enticing to us, the ones that look the most flashy, not the ones that are true. And that way, again, we have a very limited perspective on what we can do, what we can accomplish.
Interesting. And I want to stick with, this is amazing, I want to stick with this holistic approach that we were looking at energy. And again, I love leaning on the great thinkers of our time. And one of those who I see as a mentor to me is Alan Watts, a philosopher. Now he, similar to what you were saying about there cannot be evil and be no good in the world, as your counter argument, he also argued that you can never have the convex without the concave. You cannot have the one without the inverse, without the equal. Newton's law.
Exactly.
Another quote that I always have at the top of my mind from Alan Watts is this holistic approach, because he believed a lot in the school of Taoism, which is the teachings of the ancient Near East. It's an ancient Chinese way of being, so to say. It believes in the interconnectedness of anything, an energy, if you will, inanimate and animate. And he said, what you are doing is what the whole universe is doing at the place you call here and now. In the same way that the wave is something the entire ocean is doing, you are an aperture through which the universe is observing itself. And I always thought that was absolutely beautiful, and that will stick with me forever. So I guess my question coming from all of that, other than the fact that it ties in nicely, would be to elaborate on this holistic approach, the idea of everything being connected in a way. If you can answer that from a standpoint of being a Muslim, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, at the end of the day, we have the belief that, okay, well, it's sort of just simple logic. If he's the creator, what stops him from modifying? What stops him from changing? What stops him from connecting?
Mm-hmm.
What stops him from doing what we call, or what stops him from creating what we call circumstance? But in reality, it's all just a bigger plan. Again, back to the notion of the ant climbing the stick, we have no idea. We don't have a perspective on what we're looking at. And so, I guess, in that way, it is a really fantastic quote. I mean, if you look at it all as one being, one creation, in a way we are observing ourselves.
Mm.
But at the baseline, I believe that, and it is an inherently Muslim belief that his hand is in everything, and that doesn't mean be a hippie. That doesn't mean go out and if you see wind, it means you should marry this person. No, not at all. I mean, that's natural conditions. The signs will come when they come, and not in the way that you expect them to come most of the time. I mean, I have a funny example of this. In the time when I was pretty far from religion, I was feeling really down. I had a pretty big problem in my life, and I didn't really want to talk to my parents about it too much.
Mm-hmm.
They had their stresses, and obviously as a younger man you have the notion of, I sort of need to start internalizing my problems and pain. I sort of need to start dealing with it. I can't always run to mom and dad for it. So I'm in the mosque praying, going late into the evening. It's funny, I actually got kind of kicked out because they had to close. So this is about like 9:30, getting on to 10 p.m. And at this point in time, like, I told my parents, like, I'll be staying a bit longer, like as usual, like throughout this week I'll be staying a bit longer, just reading up and learning at the mosque after prayers and stuff. And they were like, yeah, no, perfectly cool. And usually they just go to bed. Like, I'd come home, let myself into the house, go probably grab like a late night snack, go to bed after that. And I walk into the house and my mum is just sitting in the kitchen. Or she's like on the kitchen, she's leaning on the kitchen counter, and she's like, you know, I have the feeling that something isn't really working right now. I don't know, something's off.
Mm.
And again, like, I hadn't shown any face as to anything that was going on. All that I said is that I'm going to the mosque a little bit longer this week because, you know, prayers are sort of later. At the time, prayers were like 9:15. So inherently kind of made sense in my head.
Yeah.
But now again, never a normal thing for her to do. First time she's done this in a long time, and she's just sitting on the counter and she's like, you know, there's this point in my life, and she told me a story that related exactly to the adversity I was talking about. Because I remember I was asking for guidance. Please guide me, show me some way through. I come home and my own mother is telling me her recounting a very, very similar experience, almost to the T of what happened to me. And she's just talking me through her thought process and what she wished she would have done, and, you know, her thoughts on the whole situation of what she did. And she said, well, I just thought I'd tell you that story. And after that she went to bed. And I'm sort of just sitting there like, okay. Well, that's one way to get guidance.
That's something to deal with now.
Exactly. So there's so many ways in which you can't anticipate you will be shown something. You know, you may not even be shown within the same day, week, month, year. There's certain things I've only come to realize years after I thought that I could see it. You know, that sort of bird's eye perspective of your life, thinking back and reflecting on what you've seen and done. And again, it's not a plan you can write. It's a plan that's already been written.
Insane story.
Mm.
That's amazing.